Hey, everybody. Stu Smith here going live. Hope you are well today, this Monday morning after Mother's Day. Hope you appreciated your moms. I did. So, but I'm a big mama's boy and not ashamed of it. Now, when I was 12 years old, I probably didn't want to be called that. But once you get a little older and you leave home, you realize, I am a mama's boy. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about tactical fitness training. One of the reasons why I wrote this latest ebook um, is because I see so many people screw up the process. And I don't know if you saw this ebook or not, but it is. I'm only doing it in ebook because there's so many links in it that it is. Um, it's it's not useful as a printed book, um, because I purposely put in there links to other articles to expand a little bit more, some links to videos that expanded a little bit more, um, variety of exercise workouts, exercises and workouts, and videos to explain those, as well as charts of free workouts. So there's a whole lot in this one, but it really focuses on the key mistakes young people make prior to joining the military and once they're even in. And number one really is not understanding the recruiting process. You really need to do your research on the recruiting process and actually know that if you don't pass the fitness test, that you, let's say you're trying to go into spec ops. A lot of people who listen to this are trying to achieve a higher level of fitness. And if you go talk to a recruiter before you can even finish a 500-yard swim, that's not smart because you're really just setting yourself up for failure, and you put yourself on a timeline that may not be enough for what you're trying to do. You're now on the recruiter's timeline. Like once you get through MEPS, you're going to get a ship date, and that's when you leave. You don't pass the PST by that time, you're not getting to the training. That's phase one. Now, because of that, and you're only focusing on just passing this fitness test, you're probably not focusing on the specifics of the training itself. So now you've done yourself a disservice and you're not preparing to get through the training. So that means rucking and swimming with fins and running longer distances, high reps of calisthenics, a little bit of load bearing, especially in those selection periods. Buds is a little bit different because the first 4 weeks are basically like any other spec ops selection where you have 4 really hard weeks, logs and boats and wet and sandy and hell week and all that. Um, but after that, I mean, buds is still hard, but it actually turns into a tactical training. It almost turns into that Q course, if you will. It's just a different juggling of tactical training methodologies, throughout the SOCOM world. And if you're not aware of how they do that, and what I mean by how, just understanding the structure of the programming that you're about to get into, you really, once again, it's not smart. So, one, you have to go into the recruiter's office, be ready to take that test on day one and crush it. Because here's why: this is a job interview. Think of it like that. It's not going into a recruiter's office and thinking it's a career fair of, I don't know, What do you got for me? That is the worst thing you ever want to do, because you go into a recruiter's office like that, they're going to say, "Oh, well, ASVAB score is pretty good. You can go do this or you can go do that." And wherever they need you is where he's probably going to direct you. So just be aware of that. Unfortunately, a lot of people do that, and then they get told, "Oh, yeah, you can go be a SEAL later, or you can go be a recon guy later." Um, and you can, for the most part, especially for Army SF, recon, MARSOC, even within the PJ world, it is a smoother transition from their regular military to their spec ops, whereas the Navy's, it's a little bit different. They do a really good job at recruiting. So they have their numbers pretty much set going in. And sometimes those year groups get full. And chances are, one, you going back or getting lateral transferred into it is very slim. So it's a personnel issue. So there's a lot of things that have to work in your favor for it to be for it to be positive in that sense. So um, so that's phase one of tactical fitness, is getting to the training. You need to do some training on your own so you can crush that fitness test. Then two, you need to take some time to also prepare to get through the training, which means 4 mile timed runs, 2 mile swims with fins, learning to tread more, um, working on some grip strength and some overall strength for durability of boats and logs and things like that. So there's some time that's needed to prepare for that. And depending on your athletic history, that may be more time than you expected. Right? If you're a cross country runner, you're going to need a lot of time in the weight room. You're coming from a football background, probably not. Probably just need to work on your cardio. So everybody has a different situation on how to best prepare for that. There's no one answer. And I think that's where people get pulled in the wrong direction many times by running 60 miles a week or swimming God knows how long with fins every day, which I think you don't need. Um, and rucking forever. So anyway, everybody has a different thing, and you really need to focus on your strengths and weaknesses. First, you need to assess yourself so you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. That's another big mistake a lot of people forget. And then once you've found your weaknesses, focus, focus on that weakness, because it will be exposed in your first few days of spec ops training. I promise you that for sure. All right. So that is my phases of tactical fitness mistakes that I see every buds class and every spec ops class that I have been involved with, um, get feedback on from people who've been there that said, you know what, I was shocked. I mean, we just took the PST and there was like half the group didn't even finish the swim, and they're already in delayed entry program. That happens. I think they're setting themselves up for failure by doing that. All right, I get a little fired up for this one. But let's take some questions if we have some. Do you have any advice for nutrition and working out when traveling? Um, I, you know what? I think I did a podcast on that one. Here's a good article on nutrition, and because here's the deal: if you're really asking me about nutrition, yeah, you may be asking me about losing weight, but I'm also going to be having you work out. So you also need nutrition for energy, but you also need nutrition for recovery. And that is what you need to focus on. Read that article I just put in there. That's a good place to start. Um, but, pack as much as you can that you like, especially with snacks, healthy snacks. I like, Some fruits that travel well, like apples and not bananas, they squish too much, but oranges, they travel pretty well. Then got to be careful where you're traveling because some countries don't allow you to bring fruit into it. I got stopped by the Beagle Brigade once when I flew into Hawaii. Had a banana in my backpack, and cute little beagle came up to me, and lady said, "You must have fruit in your bag." I said, "I do." I just thought he was being friendly. Um, but yeah, he took my banana away from me. Um, so yeah, you got to travel with something that travels well. Bring some powder. Bring some good protein powder. If you're lacking proteins and you can't find any good protein sources um, in your travels. I would say for me, that's been the hardest thing for me is finding good protein sources. Luckily, Chipotle and those type of restaurants are coming around uh, a little more prominently. You don't have to rely on McDonald's or Wendy's for protein sources, which I would not. Um, but yeah, it also depends on what you're trying to do with your nutrition. Are you trying to gain weight? Trying to lose weight? Trying to gain weight, I'd say stop off at a restaurant. Every restaurant you go to, get yourself a milkshake after your meal. Go nuts with some calories. So it really kind of depends on what you're trying to do when you're traveling. Working out, it's kind of easy. You can do nothing but calisthenics and running. If you can find a gym, you can throw in your gym workout. What I used to do is when we traveled is I would wake up in the morning and do my calisthenics and cardio. And if there was a pool, I would finish it off with a pool workout. Um, and if it was a small pool, I would just tread, no hands, just tread, no hands for 10, 15 minutes. And as one as a good cool down, but it was also a good hip mobility drill after running. And then in the evening, I tried to find a weight room after dinner, just to get a quick little lift in, no cardio, just the basics. And that would keep me up for the next couple of hours so I could continue working or sightseeing, nightlife, stuff like that. So, also, it depends on what you're traveling for. Do you have any neck training and prep for boats on heads with your guys? Yeah, we do a lot of neck stuff. We lay on our back, up and down, left and right, lay on our stomach, up and down, left and right. Just moving your head in those kind of positions and directions. You don't want to go too far over left and right, but you're going to work. You're going to work your neck muscles really well. If you want to add weight, you could put on a helmet, um, and that add a couple pounds to it. You don't need a whole lot of weight on there, but yeah. In fact, I wrote an article on preparing for boats on heads on military.com. How to strengthen your neck for carrying boats on heads. How about that? Crazy. Where'd that come from? You could have just put that question into Google and put my name in it, and this would have popped up. Because all I put into Google was I put on prepare for boats on heads, Stu Smith. Um, yeah, so let's see here. If you were aiming to run 25 miles per week, would you count a 3 mile ruck towards that goal, or would that mileage be strictly running? Great question. Because be honest with you, some weeks I count it, some weeks I don't. It really kind of depends on how I'm feeling. Like if I'm in a progression, and I'm trying to build up to like say 35 or 40, I would count that as part of my progression. However, if I have built up to something and now I'm going to plateau and stay at that distance for, say, a month or two, I would not count it. if that makes any sense. So progressing up to a point is usually I don't want to say it's the most dangerous, but it is when you are susceptible to overuse injuries. So I would definitely count it when you are progressing. When you're there and you're pretty solid at 25 miles per week, you're no longer progressing. Throw in a ruck or two on leg days, got yourself another 5 or 6 miles. I wouldn't necessarily count it. And it doesn't have to be every week. You don't have to ruck the same amount every week. It can vary a little bit. You can even, in fact, it's not a bad idea if you're trying to progress your rucking to like halt your running to a certain level, like 25 miles a week, and now start progressing your rucking and maintaining your running. So that's another way to do it as well. That's going to be more safe for you than just jumping into a 25-mile week and a 10-mile ruck one day out of nowhere. For the best swimmers you've trained, worked with, how many yards per week were they averaging? For non-swimmers who wanted to be as good as them, what should they be averaging on a weekly basis? Well, here's the deal. If I had a competitive swimmer who could, if he wanted to, swim a 6-minute 500-yard swim, I would tell him not to and say, you know what? Swim a 7:30. You'll still be in front of everybody and you'll have some juice left over for the things that you may not be great at doing. For the non swimmers who may be bigger and better runners, um, I would say as long as you can keep that pace at a yard per second, that's the pace you need to be about an 8:20. For both groups, I keep their mileage probably anywhere between 2,000 and 2,500, um, 3 to 4 times a week without fins. So you're getting about 8,000 yards to 10,000 yards without fins. Um, and we do about 4,000 yards with fins. So 2,000 yards twice a week with fins. So at the end, the maximum for a non swimming athlete I would have them do would probably be between 10,000 and 15,000 a week. But for a swimming athlete who doesn't really need it, I would probably keep them down to 5,000. Swim a couple of days with fins, and that's really all you need to do. I mean, you're going to be able to crush a swim no matter what. You need to focus on more of your weaknesses. For the swimmer, for a guy who grew up swimming, that means you grew up in zero gravity and you're not used to gravity and the impact forces of running. You're not used to lifting weights. I mean, if you are, it's because you cross train, which is wise. But I see a lot of swimmers who come in here weak as hell, and I put them in the weight room. They don't even get to swim when everybody else is swimming, unless they're helping me coach. We may put them in the water and they swim with fins because that's a different animal. And we'll put them in the water when we're treading and drown proofing and stuff like that, just to see how they handle the typical drown proofing stuff. Um, but they usually do real well with that. Yeah. So as you can see, it kind of depends. It depends on your weaknesses. If you're weak in swimming, I'm going to have you swim more. If you're great at swimming, I'm going to have you swim less. Just like I would have you lift less if you were a strength guy. I would have you run less if you're a running athlete because you need to be working on other things. Because remember, you have to be good at everything. You can't be great at one thing and suck at something else because it will be exposed on day one. That is tactical fitness explained at its finest. And where a lot of people screw it up. because what a lot of people do is they come in like, I'm a great swimmer. I'm going to go break the record and see if I can get a 540 swim on the 500. Guess what? After day one of buds, no one cares about your 500-yard swim time. What they want to see is the next 26 weeks, you're swimming a 2-mile swim with fins in the time allotted, somewhere between 60 and 85 minutes. So there you go. For those prepping more long term for SOF and LE units, what advice do you have? Concurrent training combatives. Have you had guys who balanced the two and didn't get injured? How'd they do it? Great question. Because I haven't had guys do it and not get dinged up somewhat. That is why one of my mistakes in that new ebook is take your training seriously at least 6 months before you decide to join. Because here's why. Can't tell you how many people I've seen who continued doing contact sports, rugby, hockey, football, um, and then had a plan 6 months later to go join for some arbitrary reason, which made no sense. Some of them can't help it because they're in ROTC or academy units. And that's when they graduate and that's when they go to buds. But if you have a choice, don't don't ship immediately after you finish school and playing some kind of contact sport, because chances are you could be injured. Another injury I see is triathletes who bike wreck on their bike, martial arts guys who break a fist, dislocate a elbow, sprain an ankle. So many different things, right? So the risk for injury is what you're trying to avoid that close to shipping. Now, you asked about long term. I played rugby for 3.5 years before I left to go to buds. So in that period of time, I was working my weaknesses. I didn't lift weights. All I did was run, PT, and swim. Did some biking because I couldn't really handle running yet. As I got to be a better runner, biking got less, running got more, became a better runner, became a better rugby player out of it. Um, Still was strong, even though I hadn't lifted in a while. And the rest is history. Um, so focus on your weaknesses during that long term and maintain your strengths. You could even get into a periodization model like I created. Um, like this one. Like, here's what we're doing now. We're doing the spring calisthenics and cardio block periodization model where we are doing cows and cardio for 3 weeks. And every fourth week, we do a maintenance strength week, a little deload on running because we're progressing with running and rucking, and um, take a little deload off of that and maintain some strength. Then we go into the summer, which I don't have a copy of. Summer training, which is going to be another level of progression. And then we go into the fall, which kind of takes us on the back end of that bell curve of running progression, where we start deloading running or opposite of progressing and running, regression and running, but we're starting to lift more. So it is a long-term tactical fitness training cycle I call seasonal tactical fitness periodization. And in fact, that's why I titled it such. Oh, that's not it. Sorry. Where'd she go? Thought I had one. Yeah. So this is what we'll do in the fall. Oh, winter lift cycle, seasonal tactical fitness periodization. So I have a spring, summer, fall, and winter 13-week program for each season that focuses on your strengths and weaknesses at the same time, maintaining one while you work on the other. Right. And it spreads it throughout the year. So you really don't have to worry about it. If you have a long term plan for training, that is how I would do it. And that's how I've been doing it since I was 30. So I have been doing this, I created this program when I was 30. And so it's been 23 years of me doing it personally, as well as me coaching it and writing about it professionally. And it works. Like I said, though, it's a way to train, not the only way to train. Using principles, just putting them all together into a different sort of choreography of training, if that makes sense. I'll be complete with your AFSF program in 4 weeks, and my ship date was pushed back to September. I'm thinking of rerunning the program as a maintenance with most of my focus being on my weakness. I think that's a great idea. I don't think there's anything you really need to do um, differently right now than focus on that program again. In fact, most of these programs, if you do it a second time, they're even better. I mean, I would say I first realized that with my first program I wrote called The Complete Guide to Navy SEAL Fitness. Most people who did it twice absolutely blew everything out of the water, not only from the PST, but the grinder activities that you would have to do, as well as the 4 mile runs, the swims with fins. Even though it didn't have any, load bearing activities in it, it actually was enough to prepare people for the type of grind that they needed to learn how to handle going through, that first 4 weeks of first phase. Let's see. Could you explain what sharking is? Yeah, if you Google sharking Stu Smith, I explain it in many videos and I'll show it with people screwing it up and doing it right. But basically, it's really not that big a deal because you'll get called for a high elbow coming out of the water. So whenever you do a top arm, bottom arm, and you recover your hands forward, if you're doing it like this, that is what they call sharking. Um, Sometimes they'll call it, sometimes they won't. It really kind of depends on the person. But it is out of all the swimming mistakes, it is the easiest one to fix because this is all you do: top arm, bottom arm, recover underwater, recover over water, shark. It's an easy fix. In fact, I think it's harder to recover high elbow than it is just keep your elbow down and recover it underwater. So when I say it's an easy fix, it is an easy fix. Yes, Grant. Most of your focus being on your weakness. Absolutely. Just did that. I have a few degenerative discs, and I was curious that if that would be a disqualification at MEPS. I'm still able to run and ruck. It just hurts a little bit sometimes. Um, be honest with you, Thomas, I don't know. I would say yes. If you have these degenerative discs in your medical record, if you've taken painkillers because of this back injury, they're going to find it. Um, and that is something that is very difficult to hide. If you've never been to a doctor and you just know you have degenerative discs somehow, um, you might be able to hide it. But if it's in your record, they're going to find it. Chances are that could be a big issue. But it also depends on how bad it is. So everything is kind of personalized when it comes to, you know, it's kind of like nutrition programs and physical training programs and your medical history. All of really kind of depends on what it is and what you need. How many days a week should I be doing interval running and tempo running if I'm running 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Um, that's what we do. We run those days. Usually Wednesday we do a mobility day where there's no running and it's all non-impact cardio. But I would say we do um, We usually do every other day. So there's not too many days in a row ever that we're doing like a sprint day, high fast interval day, a tempo run day, or a long slow distance day back to back. So it's kind of a an alternating circuit, so to speak. So my advice would be on Monday, maybe do your interval running. Now it depends on what you call intervals because we do two different types of intervals. We'll do hill sprint intervals where you sprint up, walk down. We'll do goal pace intervals where every set you're going to run 400 or 800 at your goal timed run pace. So it's more of a paced drill. Um, and tempo is kind of up to you how you define tempo. Are you going to do it at your goal pace? Are you going to do it faster than your goal pace? It's kind of a similar deal. I think where a lot of questions come in is when do I fit in my zone two running? And that is really kind of up to you. It really kind of depends on your ability to handle the extra running and slow long distance running um, and not be injured. So, depending on your progression, you can throw that in on a Saturday. So, for instance, here's something we are doing right now that is not part of the spring training program is we moved mobility day from Wednesday to Saturday. And the main reason why I'm doing that is we have several people who are getting ready to ship in the um, next few months. So I want them to get used to 5 days in a row of pretty hard training and resting on the weekend. So we kind of compromised with that and we replaced our Wednesday mobility day with a beach run, ruck, swim day, kind of like a Spec Ops try. So we're getting some mileage, but it's on the beach. And on Saturday, we are going to do a little bit of cardio, and this can be running, long, slow distance stuff, like can be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 miles, whatever you are capable of doing without getting hurt. And to kind of, if you miss some runs during the week, you can kind of make them up during that weekend run, or you can run zero and just do the mobility day, depending on shin splints or knee pain or whatever. So that's something we are playing around with right now. So in any of these books, you'll notice there's a mobility day on day 3, typically, or 4. Sometimes it's day 4. Like in this Air Force one, I see a lot of them are on day 4, day 3 on this one. So as you can see here, you got a whole bunch of stuff here Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, day 3, you got this mobility day. So if you wanted to, you could take that day 3, move it over to day 6, and depending on the upper body, lower body split routine, you can move everything over to the left and replace that mobility day. As long as you're not doing back to back leg days or back to back upper body days, that's fine. Um, you can just turn that, or you can just turn it into a cardio day, right? So, unfortunately, I just gave you a whole bunch of answers that probably didn't answer you specifically. So, if you send me an email and tell me how many miles a week you're running, where your strengths and weaknesses are, I can probably better um, answer that one. And also give me your definition of what interval running and tempo running is. And if you even do any zone two running, I personally don't do a lot of it. I like to do more non impact zone two stuff versus just running more. But I'm also a 205 pound runner that I know every week I am limited to the amount of running I can do comfortably on my feet, knees, and shins. Do you take mobility days when you feel overworked mentally or just when feeling aches, pains, especially? Um, that's a good question, but I don't take them because I'm hurting. Now, I will say this, sometimes I take them because I feel like crap, like fighting a cold. Um, I had bronchitis one week and I just did mobility days every day. Um, and don't worry, Keith, I'm about to answer what the difference is. I just call them mobility days. In fact, I want you to read this article because you can call them whatever you want: mobility day, easy day, technique day, recovery day. Call it what you want. You still need it. Um, but I have it scheduled. So it is a scheduled event on Wednesdays, typically for me. And however, I just mentioned I was playing around with moving it to Saturdays just to see how we handle it. I will say this: before I put them in, Friday workouts were really tough. It was just you had to dig deep in order to get them because you're probably not at 100% going into that Friday workout. You're probably down about 60, and you had to really train smartly when you're burning it pretty hard both ends of that candle. Especially you're working all day, you're mixing in hard workouts. It just makes it um, much more difficult to be at optimal performance. So Keith asked, mobility, flexibility, stretching, yoga, what's the difference? Well, first of all, you can ask Google that same question and you'll probably get pretty thorough answer. Um, they're pretty common terms, but I tend to do this. My mobility day is this: I do 5 minutes of non impact cardio activity. Nothing to do with mobility day, except for gets the juices flowing, gets the blood flowing. I feel like I'm warmed up, and now I might be a little more pliable to apply flexibility and mobility. And you do that through a combination of stretching, foam rolling, massage tooling. So think of it as mobility as in movement of joints, like your knees bend a certain way, or um, shoulders move forward, backwards, up, down, sideways a certain way, a certain range of motion. And flexibility is those muscles that allow for that mobility. So if you can get your muscles a little looser in the legs and calves and hips or region and lower back, your hips, knees, and ankles will therefore be a little more mobile. So I have found something that when I do mobility days, it helps tremendously with treading water. Where a lot of people fail to be able to tread water is they lack the mobility to actually produce a good downward kick, whether that is a scissor kick or it's a egg beater kick or a breaststroke kick. So that is one of the main reasons why we add mobility flexibility training to it. But yes, yoga is definitely classified in that genre as well. It is mobility and flexibility mixed in there. So to say the difference is minimal, but they all work together. Does that make sense? You answered my question, but I'm going to email you for specific answers so you have a better idea of where I'm at, strengths and weaknesses. Yep. Happy to answer that question. I enjoy being more specific with people versus being this general on video because unfortunately it may not be the answer for someone just because it is the perfect answer for you. So just remember that. But you can try it and see if it works. So when running during SEAL training, did your feet ever get to a point to where they felt like they were going to fail or tear? with unbearable pain? If so, how'd you manage it? It did not. I was really lucky with that one, I guess, or maybe I wasn't lucky. I did know that I wore two pairs of socks. I wore a thin pair of dress socks, which I should just keep near here because when I explain them, it is they're really nice. So anyway, it's like a thin pair of socks. This is not a sock, but it's like a very thin material, and it's very slippery. It's polyester rayon blend type of material. It's hard for sand to even get into it, um, and they dry real fast. So I would wear those as a second layer of skin underneath my big thick wool dive sock or whatever they issued you. And I never had a blister going through buds. Now my feet hurt from just running, but we also had boot insoles. I used a brand called Sorbathane. In fact, I'll put it in here so you can look it up yourself. Sorbathane insoles. Those were life changing for the old jungle boots that we were issued. Made a big difference. I will say this though, whenever we were running with logs or boats, um, I remember a couple of times, especially after if we were on pavement running somewhere, I just remember my shins being on fire. It did not feel like I had shin splints. It just felt like my shins were on fire. And there's nothing I could do about it. I just had to like suck it up and hope they went away. And eventually they did. Um, but I would say that'd be the closest I came to like fail, tear, or unbearable pain was just felt like my shins were on fire. Luckily, I wasn't injured. I was injured third phase where it was absolutely unbearable. I couldn't run. I couldn't shift the clutch in my truck with my left leg. Couldn't shift, couldn't change gears. I mean, it was that bad. I couldn't do a leg extension with zero weight. My knee was jacked. Um, but I got rolled and joined two classes later, came back faster. So some reason that happened to me and it worked out. When doing the 100, 200, 300, is it better to do as few sets as possible or space it out into set as 10 sets? Well, you know what? I have three different workouts that get you to that 100, 200, 300. And what I mean by that is you could do it as a Murph with 100 pull ups, 200 push ups, 300 squats. You could do it old school, the way we used to do it in the 80s with 100 pull ups, 200 push ups, 300 sit ups. Great prep for the EST. Um, but check out this article because there's three of my favorite workouts to crush fitness tests. And in fact, I like this one so much, I'm going to just share this one. So um, it's on my Stu Smith Fitness blogs article section, and it is a great article. Click that one, and you'll see three different ways to do it. So I do one as a pyramid. So 1, 10, 1, multiply push ups times two and your sit ups times three. You got yourself 100, 200, 300. You can do 10 sets of 10, 20, 30, 100, 200, 300. That's a superset. You can do the third option, which I do recommend once a week if you're going to do it, and that's a max rep set workout. So you try to get 100, 200, 300 in as few sets as possible. And I have seen people go from stuck in the mid teens on pull ups to 25 in about 4 to 6 weeks. Um, get into that 50, 60 range of push ups and be in the 80, 90s. Same for sit ups. But those three workouts, if you were to space those into a week, it is basically what I call my perfect classic week of calisthenics and cardio. Got a pyramid on Monday, you got a superset on Wednesday or Thursday, and then you have a max rep set on Saturday. And obviously, you're doing stuff in between with running and swimming and leg days, but those are classic and some of my favorites that I've always done. Great question. One thing, how do you survive the 50-meter underwater swim? You know what? People make a big deal about this, and a lot of them practice it on their own, and some die every year practicing it on their own. So I don't recommend being by yourself practicing 50-meter underwater swims ever. Never swim alone, to be honest with you, because it's very dangerous. Unfortunately, many spec ops students, before they are candidates, before they even join the military, have died practicing for that swim. And here's the truth. My buds class started with 120 people. By the time we took that 50-meter underwater swim, which was, I don't know, probably day 4 or day 5 of first week, we were down to 100 people. So we'd already lost 20. And we literally went 100 for 100. Nobody failed that 50-meter underwater swim. Not sure why. I don't think we were a gifted bunch of people that could do it, because here's why: only 28 of us graduated after that. So 100 people passed it, but only 28 graduated later. And you know it was harder for them? 4-mile timed runs, 2-mile swims with fins, obstacle courses, grinder PTs, runs, logs and boats, wet and cold and sandy. Yeah. So there's many more things to worry about than the 50-meter underwater swim. And they're usually the ones most people don't worry about. You want to practice it, and you want to get efficient with your underwater swims. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, which you're probably on now, underwater swim Stu Smith, put that in the little search engine, and I explain how I do it. In fact, I'm going to just put it right here for you. I just did that for you, by the way. I typed in underwater swim Stu Smith into the Google machine, and it popped out this video here that I want you to watch. And it's just me explaining the 50-meter underwater swim in a pool where they won't even let me do 50-meter underwater swims because it's dangerous. People pass out doing it. So it's probably finding a pool that will let you is pretty rare. Um, so get good at 25s and um, see how that feels. What I mean good by is be able to jump in the water, do your front flip, get over there in about 5 strokes. That is efficient swimming. If you're taking more than 5 or 6 strokes, you're overworking. On the day of the PST, do you always test your 1.5 miles on a track? No. Just depends on the venue. Some people do not, some people do. Just depends on if there's a track close to that pool. If there's not, there's probably going to be some kind of trail or round trip 0.75, 0.75 round trip and back. On the day of the, oh, okay, just answered that one. What's the hardest or most intense workout book you have? We just did the hardest week in this, which is my Hell Week prep. In this book, there's a week, and I don't recommend doing this too often, if more than once. It has let's see. I think it has 14, 15, 16 workouts in a week. So do the math on that. It's a lot of volume. And I try not to crush you with a bunch of mileage in there. It's just a bunch of annoying things. Like we did every day last week at the beach, or the week before. I can't remember now. But it was fun. every day started off wet and sandy, and we got after it, just like every other week, except for we just kept on doing it. That's my hardest one. I have two of your books, ebooks, Navy SEAL, PST, ACE screening test. The other book's hard copy, Navy PST phase one. What's the main difference? If you have Navy SEAL phase one PST workout and you have the old Navy SEAL PST ACE the screening test, there's a big difference. Um, I actually quit selling the first one. I replaced it with the Navy PST workout, but I made it for everybody. So it's Navy PST, a whole. They got 16 weeks. So the old one used to be 10 or 12 weeks, and then this one is 16 weeks because I added in the human performance test in it as well. So there's significant more activity in there. I changed the workouts, updated them all. So I just decided instead of having two phase one Navy SEAL workouts, I just got rid of the old one and just updated it to a point where it is not the same program. But the old one still works. I'm not saying it's a bad one. If you have that one, do it, and then try the new one because it is better. I won't lie to you. It's just better. It's more up to date. Um, I wrote that Navy SEAL PST ACE the physical screening test probably 10 years ago, and I wrote the Navy PST phase one 3 months ago. So I think we all get better in time. How could I find the list of Navy jobs that are overfilled at this current time? Go to my NavyHR.mil. Nope, that's not it. Navy HR. Let's see. My NavyHR.Navy.mil. Here you go. So I'm going to put this link in here for you. That should have a big list of all the um, communities. And if you're looking for the SEAL one specifically, Navy HR listed SEAL. I'll put this one in here too, and you can kind of see there's an article that's a PDF file called the E300 SEAL. Looks like it was updated in May. Damn, that's pretty good. Looking at your groups here, and your group 2018 is overmanned, 2017 is overmanned, 2016 is not, 2019 it's right at it, 2020, 2021, 2022 is they are not overmanned. So the last couple of years aren't. The first one, 2016 is the first one that's not overmanned. 2014, 2013. So yeah, there's a nice little chart in there, and I'll put this link. All you got to do is click the community summary, and you will see um, what those are. As far as other Navy jobs, each one's going to have their own little PDF. So I don't know, maybe somebody compiled all of it and made a complete chart of saying all these jobs are undermanned or overmanned. Your recruiter may have that information. I'm not sure. Starting your intermediate cals and cardio, one of my favorite programs for the 10-minute jog hills. Should you be running up and down hill pace? I'm guessing fairly easy since it's a jog. Yeah, run up the hill, walk down. I tend not to run down hills too much just because it will open your stride up, but at the same time, you are putting a lot of impact forces typically right on your heel. And if you want to send a jolt up your entire leg, um, try running on your heels downhill. So I tend to shorten my stride up a little bit and just kind of shuffle down the hill, or just walk. But yeah, run up hard. I like to run up hard and walk down, but you can also just jog them and walk down. We have one hill, so if you have a route that's 10 minutes long and it's up and winding hills, that's great. Do that. But we have one hill that's a quarter mile up, quarter mile down, and we just run up and down it, um, for time. How do you work? Not ask sure what you're asking there. I'm working right now. I sell these. I sell articles. I work out and write about it and sell what I write. Your newer phase one seems harder and lengthier. Thanks for answering. Been on the newer book. Yes, it is. I think it is a little harder, but at the same time, I think it's smarter. There were a couple times in there where I had people doing like 500 push-ups, and in hindsight, maybe you don't need to do 500 push-ups, right? In a workout, let's focus on something else. Let's do 250 and work on something else. Um, hard to find this info. What portion of Navy buds requires you to hold your breath underwater the longest, and approximately for how long? Huh. I would say the 50-meter underwater swim's about 50 seconds, maybe 45 seconds max, which isn't hard. What's hard is that you're moving. So that's why I say you want to be able to be super efficient with your strokes, so you're not wasting a lot of energy slash oxygen on just stroking 10, 15 times across the pool. Keep it to a glide, and you'll find that 25 yards doesn't even get you winded. Once you're at that level and your 25 yards isn't getting you winded, you should be able to do a 50 on game day. But you'll be able to practice when you're there too. Um, I would say the longest I held my water would or air underwater would be during pool comp, and that was probably anywhere from a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes max. Um, I did get a good breath. So sometimes if you're not afforded a good breath prior to them taking the regulator out of your mouth, you might not be able to last that long. Um, but as long as you're able to fix a problem in a certain period of time and get air again, you can breathe in 30 seconds. If you're pretty good at fixing the knots that they're tying in your regulator. It's all about relaxing and following procedures versus how long can you hold your breath. Seasonal tactical fitness periodization, a replacement, newer version of previous tactical fitness, tactical strength series. No, not a replacement at all. It's just different choreographies of similar workouts. Tactical fitness. Um, I didn't really go much into um, the seasonal process of it. It was more of a like, these are all the skills you need to do. Let's get them. Whereas tactical strength is basically a winter lift cycle that we did here back in 2016. And I created that program off of our winter lift cycle. And then the next winter was that program I have in there called the fall winter lift cycle, which I think was 2017, 2018. And then the next winter was I think it was increase strength and crush the PST IFT. That was a winter lift cycle. and then I did a spring one. That was my first attempt at block periodization, and it worked really well. Then we did a spring training block periodization model. Getting to and through selection was what that one was called. And then the latest one, as of 2023, no, 2022, was the seasonal tactical fitness periodization. So I evolve every year. I come up with new programming every year. So if you're wanting something new that has the same system built into it, just a different choreography of training around it, then that's what those are. These are just yearly programs that I've created um, throughout the years. My first seasonal tactical fitness periodization program was called Maximum Fitness. And I don't even think I have a copy of that one. Back in 2003. So I was 20 years old. A lot has evolved since then. Tactical fitness was an actual response to I sent an email to my publisher and I said, "Hey, I just heard the coolest term back in 2008 called tactical fitness. We need to write a book on it." Because I've been doing it already for like 10 years. I just didn't, I called it military law enforcement and firefighter fitness. Didn't really roll off the tongue. Once I heard tactical fitness, I was writing a book on tactical fitness because for the last 10 years, that's what I've been doing. So that's really what tactical fitness is. But it talks about all the elements of fitness that you have to be good at, um, and that is strength, power, speed and agility, flexibility, mobility, muscle stamina and endurance, grip. Um, all of those come in to part of being a tactical athlete. But there's also segments of it that deal with recovery and stress mitigation and sleep and nutrition, as well as your ability to learn new skills. So it's a big picture, and that's what I've been trying to explain to people what tactical fitness is using that kind of a Venn diagram. And if you guys haven't seen that Venn diagram, I'll show it, and then I'm probably going to have to go after this because getting a little busy. I got to pump out an article today. Um, doing a cool one though. Doing an article on nutrition needs for long uh, endurance activities, whether it's a long race or it's a long day of spec ops training. So I'm going to put this, check this out. So I'm going to share the screen here. So this is my Venn diagram that you'll see in some of my other books. Um, but this is, for optimal performance and longevity, you need all of these working really well. And the main thing is the mastery of recovery, which is all of this right here. The mastery of recovery will give you optimal performance and longevity. But you need strength, power, speed, agility, aerobic, anaerobic conditioning, muscle stamina. Those turn into durability and work capacity. And then, of course, all the sleep and physical, mental, emotional stress mitigation and flexibility, mobility, that helps too. And then you got the mental piece of this, which is your ability to learn, your coordination, your mindset, this little OODA loop, which is really cool. If you've never heard about the OODA loop, you got to read about it. Do OODA loop Stu Smith, and you'll see a great article I wrote on exactly what the OODA loop is. I'm going to leave that there and not explain it because it's that cool. In fact, if you're ever on an Air Force base, you will probably, and there's a loop on it. It will probably be called the OODA loop. It is that famous. It's pretty cool little history. So check it out. Um, let's see, a couple more. All right, this is going to have to be my last one because it's over an hour already. Hey Stu, what do you think about the Ranger pipeline? saying is one of the hardest jobs in the military is being a Ranger private. Yeah, I would agree with that. We just had a guy just get through RASP and heading to one of the Ranger regiments, 75th, I think. So he said it was tough. He was glad he did a lot of rucking and running. In fact, he was really glad we ran a lot of hills and rucked on the beach because that really bulletproofed his legs to be able to handle a lot of the miles and load bearing that's needed as being a ranger. Um, in the blog, you mentioned avoiding shaking. Avoiding shaking when doing push-ups. How do you know when to stop the set if you don't reach that point? My thing is just don't shake. Like if you're doing a push-up and you can't do another push-up and then you start shaking uncontrollably, that is just a central nervous system breakdown that is going to be very hard to recover from. So you're done when that happens. And if you can avoid that, you'll be able to recover for the next set much faster. Looking for overman jobs in the Navy as a contingency in case I get injured at BUD/S. But here's the problem, getting an overman job in the Navy is not easy. They're typically going to say, "Sorry, we're overmanned. We're not taking new people." Um, so I'm not sure how to answer that for you. Robert, thank you. Glad you appreciate it. Mobility refers to range of motion of your joints. That's what I didn't understand about Mobility Day terminology. Yes. There you go. We're all smarter today. And inflammation. Yes. You got to prevent inflammation. That's a good one. And that's really part of what recovery is. Stress mitigation is also inflammation. I could throw that in there too, for sure. All right, folks, if you haven't been over there to stewsmithfitness.com, check out those articles over there, programming. Got a ton of them. And, if you have questions, send them to me, stew@stewsmith.com. Happy to answer them. Also, if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Give me a like. This thing runs on likes. And if you want to go to stewsmithfitness.com, I got a live. Check out that little area right here. Yep, right here. It's hard to do that. Right there. Live 1.5. Live 1.5 will save you 15% on any programs. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do some combat swimmer stroke videos tomorrow. Until then, catch you later.